to attain freedom when others have shed blood to pursue the same aim. It is also because he sought to liberate every human being from the chains of his own prejudices, our own prejudices. It is because he fought for that fundamental right of dignity, equality, justice, and equity for every human across every conceivable identity. It isn't just for the human. He's a person who said that the progress of a nation and the moral fiber of a nation could only be judged on how they treat their animals. He was also a person who spoke ahead of his time when he said that the nature provides enough for every man's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. So today, when we speak of sustainability, here's a person who not only embodied it in his personal life, but spoke actively about it. Not as a segregated idea, but as a part of a larger whole. And it isn't just the environment, it is also because he gives every person the opportunity to believe that it isn't just important to live for oneself, it is even more important to live for others, to be in service of others. As he said, that if you want to discover yourself, you need to lose yourself in the service of others, of humanity. And it is something that was practiced in a daily life. It is also the way he lived. It is too often that we all preach something and do something else in our personal lives. But to take on those personal sacrifices and struggle is something that actually elevates him above most other humans who have achieved great deeds in life. So when you think of the 20th century, or you think of the era before that, there are many ideas that competed for power, for influence, and for the imagination of this world. And if you think of 21st century today, the only idea, the only belief, the only philosophy that endures is the idea of Mahatma Gandhi. We saw the rise and fall of communism, we've seen the rise and fall of fascism, we saw the rise and fall of various other alternative ways of, we saw the rise and eventual fall of colonialism. But it's one idea that has endured, and if you go across the world, you will see statues to Mahatma Gandhi and Gandhi centers in more than 100 countries, in more than 120, 130 cities. I've seen them in the remotest parts of the world, and of people actually going there, taking their children to explain who this man was and why the statue is there in a cold part of a Nordic country, or in the deserts of Africa, or in these urban jungles of the United States, of people who go there. So today, when we are here as part of a global movement today, of remembering him not simply to celebrate a life that is incomparable, but also to remind ourselves that what he lived and died for is even more relevant in the world of today. And which is why this 2-year celebration is taking place across the world. To fight against the violence that is taking place, to once again overcome the divisions of identities, of boundaries, the forces of domination and coercion that is sweeping once again across the world, the differences that is once again dividing us. To remind ourselves once again that the future of this world depends on how sustainable we are and how much we are able to respect the Mother Earth. So this is the objective. And we can only achieve this if we can take this message to the youth. And this is the challenge that we all face. It isn't just about doing a seminar, it isn't just about the films, it isn't just about the great events like this, or reading about him, doing quizzes about him. It is how do we once again capture the imagination of the youth, as he himself did when he led India to freedom struggle. Because today, if you talk to the youth, they will remember the romance of Che Guevara, they will remember the romance of Marx, they will still talk about, in India, about Bhagat Singh. But very often Gandhiji's confined Mahatma Gandhi to the elder, to the more senior. Of course, I know Atul Temirkar-ji is doing at most in his school. He's got a Gandhi Center and he's just done a quiz competition in his school on Mahatma Gandhi. And so we have to remember the things that excite the imagination of the children. Think of him as a human. Think of the fact of his courage. We speak of courage of youth in terms of the ability to use force. But his courage was that in the face of rising religious tension, he could retain the clarity of his vision and the conviction of his belief in that syncretism, in the oneness of humanity, even in the madness that swept across the subcontinent of South Asia in the time of partition. It is the courage to believe that you could pursue a means so lofty as independence, using peaceful means despite all use of force and incarceration in prison from time to time. Can we speak to the youth about that courage? Can we speak about him as an innovator? He was very innovative, if you think, almost entrepreneurial in the way he handled the freedom struggle, in the way he changed the narrative, in the way he used various incidents and events to mobilize people as a mass movement. Can we talk to the youth not just in terms of the fact that he was an innovator, but that he was also an experimenter. He experimented with so many things in life. He experimented with freedom movement. He had the courage to call off a rising tide of non-cooperation movement because there was violence once. And he was pilloried by many for saying, Gandhiji, you called off a movement just when it was gathering momentum. He said, we are not ready for it yet because we haven't learned to reject violence when violence hits us. That is experimentation of a different kind. Can we speak of him as the great sustainability advocate, as the champion of sustainability? And can we speak of him, of the words he used, the soul force, against and as in juxtaposition to the brute force? For him, soul force was the force of the inner self, of mobilizing our inner resources, of getting control over our senses, our body, our diets, our life, our habits. Because in his belief, if you controlled your senses, you could conquer the world, you could conquer your dreams. And can we therefore turn the youth's belief in force into a belief of soul force? We'll have to use imagination in doing it. Because his relevance will come when the youth begin to see him as their icon, as their inspiration, as their example. And we hope that in the course of these 2 years, we will rely upon you, rely upon all our friends here, to put together a series of activities, events, engagements, and interactions with the youth and with the community at large that will take the message, the life and the mission of Mahatma Gandhi into the lives of every citizen, every human being in this world. Singapore has a fascinating connection with Mahatma Gandhi. As we all know that though Mahatma Gandhi never visited Malay Peninsula or this region or Singapore, but people were touched by him. And therefore when he died, this place was enveloped by a huge sense of grief. People went on fasting for 13 days as though one of their own had died. Mr. Rajbali Jumaboy created a committee that was to raise $100,000 to erect a statue to Mahatma Gandhi as a way of expressing tribute to him, and that statue came up in 1953. And in 1948, almost as a response to this grief, the then representative of India here in Singapore, Mr. John Thivi, brought a portion of the ashes of Mahatma Gandhi to Malay Peninsula, to Singapore. It went around and it was kept here in Victoria Concert Hall for 3 days for people to pay their last respects. And then it was taken in a procession for immersion, the ashes for immersion off Clifford Pier. And the Sunday Tribune reports, Sunday Tribune of that time, that 10,000 people joined the procession. Imagine a Singapore of that time, and 10,000 people, Malay, Chinese, Indians, Europeans, all joined. 5 women, girls sang his favorite religious hymn, Raghupati Raghav Rajaram. And when the ashes were immersed in the waters of Clifford Pier, there were people who had gone into the waters on 20 chartered boats, and they drank water from the sea as a last gesture of respect and as a last measure of homage to the departed soul. Water from the sea, because the ashes had been immersed in that. And that was the strength of the feeling here in Singapore. And a Royal Flying Club aircraft flew over her dive low to shower rose petals here. So that was commemorated this year on June 2nd, when Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and ESM Mr. Goh Chok Tong unveiled, in the presence of the leaders of Interreligious Organization of Singapore, a plaque at Clifford Pier to commemorate that historic occasion, which we think is a sacred thread that binds our two countries together, because a place of immersion of ashes in the Indian mythos is a holy place, is a sacred place, and therefore, for us, in some sense, Singapore is part of that sacred heritage of India. And it is there we saw a group of Chinese musicians play Raghupati Raghav Rajaram on Chinese instruments in an unbelievably beautifully haunting manner, which Prime Minister then put out on his Facebook, and it had 1.5 million hits. And then he got us to record it all over again, because he wanted it recorded in front of the plaque. And they've done a marvelous job of it. You will see it very soon on the screen. And there was a group of Indian women who sang Vaishnava Janatho. These are the 2 hymns that always formed part of his daily prayers. And as you know, Vaishnava Janatho is written by Narsim Mehta, a 15th century poet, and speaks about the attributes of a good human being, a Vaishnava. It starts by someone who feels someone else's pain as his own, someone who's always there to help others but does not develop a sense of pride or conceit in doing it, and so on and so forth. And of course, Raghupati Raghav Rajaram was an ode to inclusiveness, multicultural relation harmony, to interreligious, interfaith harmony, to the oneness of people in humanity, and to the message of peace and brotherhood for all people. And that song was so beautifully sung by women in Singapore that it triggered a thought in Prime Minister's mind. And he said, I want this sung in every UN member state. And we have contributions from 124 countries. And this was triggered by Singapore, and which has now been put into a medley of 5 minutes. And you have even President Waka of Nauru is one of the singers. So you've countries from all over the world. You'll see a 5-minute rendition of that, and that also, of course, includes a portion from Singapore. And today, Prime Minister also concluded what was a Mahatma Gandhi International Convention on Sanitation. And it is a convention that was designed to address something that was so dear to Mahatma Gandhi. Because for him, sanitation wasn't just about cleanliness, it was also a question of human dignity. And we're proud to say that in the course of 4 years, we've made enormous progress in addressing this endemic challenge in India. We've built 86 million toilets in the course of 4 years, but there's still a long way to go in addressing this challenge. And to commemorate this day, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong wrote an op-ed on, because Singapore has been an inspiration for India and for Prime Minister in his campaign for Swachh Bharat or Clean India. And so today, in at least 5 newspapers carried an op-ed from Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong on this whole concept of cleanliness and on Mahatma Gandhi's message on this issue. So this again shows us that this is more than just an event that is global. It has a special place in the hearts of Singaporeans. It is a sacred thread between India and Singapore. And this marks the beginning of what I hope would be 1 year when we will take the message, life and mission of Mahatma Gandhi to our people, to our children, so that they can help hopefully build the world that he dreamt of, a world that is certainly better than we experience today. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, once again for being here.